This is, such as it is in terms of membership, the Enterprise Committee. And that's our November meeting. And, we're going to hear from first ML&P and then from the port, and then just get an update as to where we are on the project and how great everything is.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We're going to go through the report that's been presented.
Just for the record,
oh.
what's your name too? I didn't even put mine. This is Tim Steve.
Mark Johnston, MLP.
Eugene or MLP.
And we'll wait and see.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. We had conversations yesterday. We've had meetings with Quanta, and they have confirmed as of yesterday morning that they still intend to make the projected completion date of June 2016. They have taken a number of steps to ensure that they're able to do that. While we had raised some concerns with them, they have addressed the concerns to us, and we are seeing some progress that they're making, and we believe that they are very motivated to make sure that they meet the timeline that they laid out and the completion date of June 2016. You see the safety statistics there. Those have show that we are continuing to be safe, and we're below both Alaska and national averages. And safety is a prime concern for them at the work site. We have the work that's in progress there. We've highlighted a number of areas that they are working on, and had the opportunity over the last couple of days to talk to them about the work that they're going to be doing and how that's going to come together. And I believe that we are satisfied that what they're doing is what needs to happen. Could it be better? Possibly, but they are making a great effort to get those issues under control and move the project forward. On the second page, and as I go through, if you have any questions, just let me know. On the second page, we talk about the schedule, and as I said, we met with the president yesterday, and he confirmed that they do in fact plan to be done with the June 12th, 2016 date. The pending project or scope changes, there's a number that are listed there that we are working on that will be part of change order 9 that is in process now. And as that gets closer to being finalized, we'll talk about specifically those as we move forward. And those change orders then are also listed there below that, and the ones that we have done thus far, 1 through 8, that total $2.3 million. Change order 9 at this point is not to exceed $219,678. We have a change order that was processed to the GE contract that reduced that contract by $3.6 million. That is related to some spare parts and maintenance tools that we anticipated buying. We thought that we might be able to get a better price for those if we included them as part of the project. Eugene found as we went through that was not going to be the case, and we determined that rather than buy them now, if we're going to not get a deal, we might as well wait and buy them closer to the time that we're actually going to use them, so that we won't expend the money now and have that set.
Is there unique tools in the
They are spare parts and tools for these particular turbines, but we do have, some of them could be used on some of our other turbines. The other is the item that will come before the assembly. It's on the agenda for Tuesday night. It is change order number 4 to the IEC contract. It is an increase of $3 million. Eugene has talked about this in past meetings, and it was anticipated it would be slightly smaller. That was based on some initial estimates, as we have gone through the process and done some significant work to determine the actual amount, we've determined that $3 million is where it needs to be in order for us to be able to complete all the work that will need to be done by IEC. And you may remember that IEC is the owner's engineer. They're the ones that work closely with us to make sure that the contractor completes the work in the way it's supposed to be done based on the contract. So they're there to protect us and make sure that we get the quality product that we expected, that we wanted to do when we started. If you flip the page to the bi-weekly budget review, you will notice that the projected column, it had been previously as of January 2015. We have updated it as of November 2015, and that takes into account on the lines with GE, the reduction in that GE contract to get it to the $50 million. And it also takes into account the IEC increase that we will be requesting for the $3 million. You get to the bottom line there, the projected is, and that the last change was with the AFUDC. It was reduced about $10 million. As we have gone through the project, we initially were looking at an AFUDC rate, which is interest that is capitalized as part of the project. We were started with a rate of about 8%, and with the working with the administration and public finance, with the commercial paper program, it's allowed us to borrow money for significantly less than that 8% rate. In fact, last year it was at 2.2% was the AFUDC rate, and that's driven primarily by the commercial paper program. This year it's at 0.46%. So while we had projected $28 million, as we've gone through this and we've become more comfortable that rates are not going to change, we've been able to reassess that and reduce that to the $10 million that's there. Prior to this report, and I think the October reports that you saw, it was at $20 million, so we had brought it down from 28 to 20, and now we're bringing it down from 20 to $10 million. So it lowers the overall cost that's projected at this point to $290 million, and the differences from those have flowed down into the contingency. So the contingency is extremely large at this point, and we don't anticipate spending that because, of course, a large chunk of that $10 million is interest, and if we don't pay the interest, we won't spend it. If you flip to the next page with the 30-month proposed payment schedule, that shows you, it shows that we have paid the September payment. We have the October payment. It's going to be processed. I believe it's about $7 million for Quanta. And we will expect that those payments will, I think, was it the October payment yesterday that we were going over with Quanta?
Yes, that was correct.
So we'll finalize that, we'll get that into the system and process, but things are moving along as we expected at this point, based on the numbers that they have. Flip to the...
So you expect it to be lower than or equal to the October, the current projection there?
Cool. Pretty close to it.
Yeah, it's going to be close. The next page shows the project as a whole, and as you can see, I know that we've talked about this in the past, that the actual number is significantly below the blue line, and that's because we anticipate the budget coming in at less than what was anticipated. So we won't see, we believe, that orange line or the gray line get to the point where it's going to get close to the top of that blue line, which is a good thing.
Have the blue lines changed over the life of the project, or are they basically what was originally?
They are basically what was originally. And then the remainder of the package just shows you some pictures of the activity that has gone on over the last several weeks at the plant. They're doing obviously a lot of equipment placing and doing work on the inside. They have been working on putting together some of the outbuildings that remain to be constructed. And
You ready for snow?
we need to be, because it's snowing down there. They are ready for it. One of the issues yesterday that at the beginning of the meeting was their safety minute that they go over before every meeting. They talked about winter gear, being able to work in the cold. They talked about wearing these spikes on your shoes when you're outside so that it prevents slip and falls. Good job there. And they talked about when you then go inside, taking those off, because wearing those on the inside on concrete that then may cause a hazard on the inside. So
And wear it on your spikes and then another can drop.
absolutely. So that was kind of a quick go through on the report. If you have any questions.
I do want to know for the record that Dick Turney and my dad did just come in or came.
Got here, baby.
Yes. So all in all, you're where you thought you were going to be before the first snow. I mean, so you don't have it totally closed in, but pretty close. Do you still have outside work to do?
There's still some outside work that will be done. The main structure is closed in and they're able to do a lot of the work. They were talking yesterday about the possibility of starting some of the testing of some of the systems that are inside the plant.
All
So-
your cooling water stuff is all, so you were, let's see, last time I think you were doing a line over to plant 2 for.
That's actually water supply
Yeah.
for startup, and that work is actually starting next week.
Oh, okay.
And it is frozen ground, and they're gonna have to thaw. And what we're doing is we're tapping Plant 2's fire water line so that
Yeah.
Plant 2A can provide fire water to the old Plant 2 down the road. But what I thought you might be getting at is the large bore pipe connections to AWW, the big trenches to the project. It's all done, it's all complete, and that was a big task they wanted to get done before winter. To your question about are they all enclosed, the 2 big critical path buildings, the power block building is all closed. There's a lot of work going on inside. The high voltage switch house is also enclosed. The pictures you see here of the Butler building going up is the pump house that pumps water to our cooling tower or to AWW for cooling the plant. That's being worked. It is enclosed at this time because, and they're working that. And the final critical path building is to the south up against the hillside. It's called the gas compressor building that takes gas from at the delivery point at Start, pumps it up to pressure needed for the turbines. And that is going to be winter construction, and they're working that now.
You have to have that, going back a little bit to the fire water connection to plant 2, that's a 6 or 8 inch line. And do you need that? The plant's not gonna be operating before.
No.
Is that something you can do?
What it was it was under change order, and it was something we just decided to link Plant 2A to Plant 2 via water, because down the road, the AWW is going to lower the water pressure to Plant 2, and by doing this now, they're going to lower the water pressure enough that it affects the sprinkler ratings in all the various buildings, and so this one pipe in the ground avoids a very expensive fire water pump house or other upgrades that would be needed later.
Okay.
So it was something low-hanging fruit to attack now to avoid a cost down the road. Plant 2, but it will not be needed unless emergency.
But it's no big deal? I mean, or is it a high cost item to fall and put in that one?
Well, it's hard money. It was bid, it was bid this last summer, I think 230K, and it's already been executed under this. But
it may cost them more, but our cost is.
Yeah.
is there.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Mike, do you have any questions for these folks, or have they told you everything?
No, sir. Did you guys talk about the action item for the assembly
I did
Great.
mention that the change order for IAC will be on the agenda on Tuesday.
Great.
$3 million.
And that's the one that's described in the
Yeah.
project budget summary.
Okay. Well, that's petty cash, take that out of the mayor's budget.
City manager's budget.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming down and keeping us up to speed. It's kind of a critical time right now in terms of getting over the winter operations.
And who knows, we may actually have an winter this year with some snow.
Yeah.
We had to get
And,
safety issues because that was going on.
thank the interest rate gods.
Yes, very much so.
Mr. Chairman, we're hoping to talk a little bit about the port modernization project now, if that's
Yep.
okay with you. Probably kind of divide it up into two segments. Steve and Todd can give you an update on the project to date, and then I'd like to give you a little bit of a description about what we're doing moving forward. Yeah. So if that's okay with you.
Is that proposed? Is that yet to be determined or has it been determined?
Still under consideration. There's still, I'll give you a little bit of an update on that. But Steve and Todd can sort of walk you through the first few pages of the report in terms of activities since our last presentation.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, guys. The floor is yours.
We should reintroduce ourselves.
Yeah, and for the record, Steve Rebuffo, Port Director.
Todd Coles, Port Engineer.
On LHCH2M PM.
Tell me all the good news.
I can lead off.
Go ahead.
So quickly from our last update, we have added one task order to the completed task order list. That's task order 6, which was the programming activities for the design, build, procurement of landside buildings. The programming report was finalized, and when we're in a position to move forward to the next step, that will be the starting point for design, build, procurement package.
Okay.
There have been no task orders approved since our last update. The work in progress under task order 2 for CH2M includes electronic document management system testing and implementation. That has been completed, and the implementation is in progress. We've analyzed 2 alternatives for reprioritizing the project in preparation for the 2016 State of Alaska funding request. I believe that's what Mike's going to get into in a little bit, so we'll come back to that. Under CH Task Order 4, the test pile work plan, CH continues to perform construction management services for us on that activity. Under the permitting aspects of that plan, the monitoring and mitigation plan and incidental harassment authorization application to National Marine Fisheries Service was revised and submitted to NIMS to reflect the schedule shift from fall 2015 execution of test pile work to spring 2016. We'll speak more to the construction management activities under that section for the Kiewit contractor. Under task order 5, the precursor activities for the marine terminal designer of record procurement. We have completed our evaluation of the Geotechnical Advisory Commission's recommended seismic performance requirements. We are briefing those out next month, starting with Mike in early December, and the Geotechnical Advisory Commission at their next meeting on December 22nd. Under Task Order 7, precursor activities for the North Extension Stabilization Procurement, site data gathering from Task Order 8 is being compiled, and we're planning on descoping actually that task order based on the reprioritization alternatives that we'll talk about a little further down the way here. Task Order 8, landside site investigation. We've completed all the field work on the mapping, the surveying, environmental and geotechnical activities. The construction management manual and the CAD manual for the project have also been completed. So that work is progressing well. Under task order 9, overall project permitting, the draft permitting technical memo for the recommended permitting approach from the CH2M HDR team has been received by the port. We've made some comments, and actually, since we generated this report, we've held the review conference. Those comments are being addressed in the technical memos being finalized. There are no pending task orders at this time, and there are no task orders under development, any new task orders under development. I'm going to turn it over to Lon to talk about the test pile program and where we're at with Kiewit.
Good morning. As far as the test pile program, contractor is Kiewit. We've had 12 RFIs, requests for information, that we've received and responded to. We also received a revised geotechnical work plan early in October and accepted that. The geotechnical field borings were commenced on schedule October 8th, and they were completed actually last week, the week of November 10th. Successfully completed all of them, and the contractors demoed the draft technical results expected to be submitted in December, and we're still on track for test pile driving itself to commence in spring 2016. So there's been no change orders or issues with that contract to date.
Now, the test piles, the geotechnical work and that's basically just a stabilizing job, is that correct?
That's actually to gather data in areas
Yeah.
that we
To
didn't
see
have
if-
good
To see
coverage.
if you can do,
Right.
drop a pile in there and beat it in.
Many of the holes were bored from the existing wharf. They actually cantilevered over the wharf edge and bored some holes down within the footprint of the existing facility. That's as close to the future location as we can get, but that fills some of the data gaps. We also bored some holes at future trestle locations where we expect the trestles to be. So that was more landside, but that was the primary focus of the test pile program, geotechnical data gathering.
Okay, but it's to serve two purposes. One is the deteriorating piles to replace when we put the sheeting on them, or is this merely for the new work? in terms
This
of
is
the
for the new wharf construction, the new terminal 1 and 2 construction, and the trestles for that. And yeah,
If I-
maybe POL2. I think we got a hole at POL2 as well.
Look at that, we also, these boreholes were significantly deeper than the previous holes because our piles are going to be longer.
Yeah, I'm just trying.
The wildlife impact from this doing to spring, what are you guys planning on?
Actually, that's one of our issues that we're planning on talking about. We're still working through the permitting process with National Marine Fisheries Service. There's been some change in NIMS' perspective on the sound radius around the project. They've increased it dramatically, and so we're still working through those details with them. We just received a letter from them yesterday or the day before that we haven't fully digested, but it explains their rationale on increasing that radius, which would be the monitoring radius that we'd be held to and potentially have to shut down work, in water, pile driving work, should the whales come into it. It essentially takes that radius out to Point Warrenzoff. It's quite a jump. I mean, right now, I think we're probably about a third of the way, if I had to guess, maybe down to the Ship Creek area, but this would take us all the way to Point Warrenzoff. So we're kind of digesting that change. It potentially has some significant impacts when it comes to the monitoring, cost for monitoring, and then the probability of shutdowns as a result of whales within
Are there
that zone.
typical times when they're in that area, or I mean, during
Well,
salmon runs, or
One of the justifications NIMS actually used to, I would say, influence us to the spring
Yeah.
construction
Yeah.
is that there's less probability of whale activity in that area in the spring.
Spring versus December.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you have to have observers present when you're doing that or getting ready to do that?
We would have
Somebody
observers
has to clear it.
present during all the in-water test pile driving work,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
That's all.
If I can add one kind of late-breaking aspect of this, there's some emergency repairs going on at Port Mackenzie currently. And they've got to get that permitted, and talked to the port director yesterday, and they're struggling with some of the same issues that being placed on them just for their repair project. So I asked him if he would keep us in the loop, because obviously, you know, if they've come up with a resolution or some kind of a compromise that works for them, there's no reason why the same thing couldn't work for us, or at least we can bring that to the table as part of the discussions with NIPS.
Are you dealing with NIST people in town at the Federal Building, or are they in Juneau?
Well, there's a combination. The Marine Mammal Act
Yeah,
folks
yeah.
are down in Silver Spring, Maryland. There are local NIMS folks. Are they more on the ESA, the Endangered
Yes,
Species
yes.
side? So there's the Endangered Species Act folks, and then there's the Marine Mammal Protection Act folks, and the local people are the endangered species. There's overlap to some degree in the regulations.
I was gonna say, they used to come out of Seattle, but they're making you go with the permit, you have to go back to Washington to get them approved.
The incidental harassment authorization, I think, ultimately gets approved in Silver Spring.
Those all come out of Washington.
Yeah. Okay, so getting back on track, we've got a couple of attachments at the end of the packet speaking to a tabular presentation of where we are on effort to date with respect to budget, and then our cost curve presentation that shows you a better refinement in a temporal scale. We are tracking under budget in the project, and so we have no budget issues at this point. Anything you want to elaborate on?
There's not been any significant changes to the budget report. As you can see, we're 2% spent overall on this program. And on the next, as Todd said, on the next one, we continue to track our actuals under our budget.
Okay, Amy, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. I'm sorry I was about 10 minutes late. I had another thing run over, but
All right, welcome.
can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah, just a second, I had one in my mind here and I don't want to lose it.
Okay, go ahead.
In terms of the budget, you changed some of the requirements in the budget, so.
That's what we're going to get to
Okay,
next.
yeah.
The budget cost curve
Yeah.
is that work that's been contracted and authorized that we're on schedule for doesn't incorporate any of the alternatives. We'll reprioritization yet.
Amy, go ahead with your question.
Well, because I was late, you might have already addressed it. And if you have, I'll just catch up with Todd offline. But has there been, with the realization now that Marston's come in and they've made some requests, has that been addressed at all in this meeting?
That actually is the next thing we're moving into, issue 6A. We have undertaken a qualitative rough order of magnitude analysis of what Matson's requirements in terms of wharf deck width, 4 cranes versus 3, 100 gauge versus 50, and then their requested power system for the cranes. That analysis is underway and will be completed very shortly on what schedule and rough order of magnitude cost impact incorporating those requirements into the project scope would mean. So that's it for the project report. We're, I think, ready to segue into the phasing alternative.
Let me make sure, Amy, did you have any other questions on the current project? They're going to go into a discussion of possible changing of priorities.
No, that's fine. I'm hearing it. I didn't, just for Todd, maybe if you could follow up after the meeting sometime today. For some reason, I'm not finding the handouts in my email, but if you could just email them to me again, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, we came right down the wire yesterday on one edit to the report, so it may not have been sent to you in advance.
That's okay. That's okay. If you just follow up, I'd like to just look at them in case I have additional questions. Thanks,
Sure.
though.
No problem.
Okay, Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I'd like to take and sort of brief the committee on is sort of described on the third and fourth pages of the handout, third, fourth, and fifth pages. We're currently in the process of discussing with our port stakeholders the possibility of reprioritizing or reordering the phases of the port modernization project. We're not proposing any change to the overall objectives of the project, but we are interested in getting the stakeholders' opinions on the possibility of reprioritizing. Right now, the next big chunk of investment would be, according to the current phasing, would be to take out or to begin to demolish the northern extension, somewhere between a third and a half of it, and to remove that. And that's important to some of our stakeholders because of the impact that northern extension has, as it's currently configured, on the deposition of material at or around the freight terminals, especially the northern freight terminal that's currently used by Toad. The challenge with that is that although that would improve the functionality of the current location of that Toad terminal, it doesn't do us any good in terms of improving the port's functionality over the long term. So what we're talking to stakeholders about right now is the possibility of reprioritizing, and instead of doing the demolition of the northern extension first, instead to work on the improvements to the terminals before we do the demolition of the northern extension, and essentially flip or reverse those in order. It has a couple of benefits from some perspectives, and it poses challenges in others. The benefits would be that the shippers and the other port users would see immediate benefits from the next level of investment in the port. We'd be able to immediately begin to improve the POL and freight terminals, and then once that work had been done, we would then be able to work with the northern, to deal with the remediation of the issues related to the northern extension. We believe that by moving all of the freight terminals south and west, essentially south down the port and out further into the inlet, that will address much of the current concerns about deposition of material that have elevated the concerns about the northern extension and have encouraged people to want to remove the northern extension sooner rather than later. We think that gets us more bang for our buck. The administration will be proposing that the port project essentially be the municipality's only capital request before the legislature in 2016. It has such a priority, and it provides such an impact on the entire municipality of Anchorage as well as the statewide users that rely on the port, that we're going to recommend that be essentially our only capital budget request in 2016. And that obviously will be presented to the Assembly for your review and concurrence. As a part of that, we think that request will be most impactful if we can tell the legislature and the state generally that if our near-term request is funded, that we will be able to fully rebuild the freight terminals and the POL terminals with that initial investment. It's a big initial investment. It will exceed $200 million. But if funded, we will not need further state support in order to ensure that the port and its primary users, primary current and anticipated users, are able to use the port for the next 75 years, and to be able to address major seismic events at similar to or greater than what was experienced in 1964. So that's the message we want to be able to talk to the legislature about. But that is different from what we have told, than what our stakeholders have approved in the recent past, as you know, as recently as 2014 and early 2015. So we're in conversations with those stakeholders now. We need essentially a unanimous message in Juneau. We need the municipality moving in lockstep with Matson, with Tote, with Crowley, with our other key stakeholders, and other key port users, so that there's no confusion about what our priorities are and how the money would be used if it were obtained. So I do not have a fully approved message yet from those stakeholders. We're actively meeting with them. In fact, the mayor was meeting with several of them earlier today. So there's still work to be done in that area, but that is the direction that the administration is moving, so that we can, we believe, have a reasonable chance to obtain funding, significant funding, in 2016. We believe, for a variety of reasons, that this will be the only good opportunity that we have for large chunks of state funds over the next 3 to 5 years. And so we want to make the best pitch possible in that time frame.
How do you keep the port operable from the customer's point of view?
We have a phasing plan that will do that. The construction will take place in relatively small bites during the project, much as it would have under the previous phasing. However, the big difference
You're
is
moving
not
out to 45 feet.
right, and that's what we were going to do
Yeah.
anyway. But that was going to be done after the northern extension had been demolished. We're simply proposing to do that work before the northern extension is demolished now. And our hope is that our stakeholders will agree that even without changing the current configuration of the northern extension, that by moving the freight terminals south and out into the inlet, that they will achieve their objectives to be able to avoid the impacts of the deposition of silt that's currently taking place right now, and that's requiring us to go through somewhat non-traditional methods to avoid having that deposition impact maritime activities.
What time of year and how much time is it going to take to do that?
It'll be done over about a 7-year period. If the funding arrives in 2016, I think it's 7 years before the freight terminals are fully and the POL facilities are fully built. During that 7-year period, the project anticipates that there will be supplemental dredging required to keep essentially the northern freight terminal in operation, as well as the availability of a third tug to assist in the maritime operations during that period as well. Those expenses would be borne by the project and are included in our project budget. And although we have a tentative number on, I think it's the 4th page of the handout here, which is an additional ask of $237 million, that's still subject to a little bit of fine tuning. It's not going to move a lot from that, but it could move, $10 or $20 million, I would hope, down, but we're not locked in. We will be within the next few weeks. on what that number is, because we have to be in order to go to Juneau with this proposal.
Do you have any indication at all from anybody? We talked with anybody in Juneau?
Yes. The municipality's been talking to Juneau about the port for as long as any of us have been around. So there's no lack of awareness of the priority of this. Obviously, the approach to this project changed radically about 4 years ago. And we have not received funding from the legislature since then, in part because we were in a transitional period between projects, if you will, and in part because there was some concern about how the previous state funds had been utilized, legitimate concerns. So we will have to overcome that skepticism, if you will. We've already begun. We've already scheduled boat tours of the port. Next week, a week from yesterday, I believe, we have a scheduled tour for, I think we have 4 or 5 legislators confirmed now to get on one of the tugboats and take them alongside the dock face. There's a low tide, so you can actually see the pieces of the port that are, or of the piles that are damaged and that have been weakened by corrosion. You can see the reinforcement that's been done on some of the piles and that may have to be done on more even before the project is completed. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, then a personal experience like this will be worth 1,000 pictures. So the more people we can get to have this sort of exposure and to be somewhat viscerally aware of the condition of the existing facilities, the better off we are. And there may be opportunities for more of this later in the winter before the legislature convenes around, I think it's the 19th in 2016.
Good argument, for the state, I think, would be the fact that the customers are still investing in the port.
You bet.
Of the new developments out there. Business is booming and it'll boom even more. Helps out. So, did you have?
Mike, as you're trying to build consensus in Juneau, would you consider a name change on this? Please look at changing it to the Port of Alaska Anchorage. Because here's the problem. We go to Juneau for a Port of Anchorage, it's an Anchorage project. But this port gets arguably 81% of everything, 85% that comes to Alaska. It's not just the Port of Anchorage. So we need to go there with the message the Port of Alaska has to be an Anchorage.
Are you willing to cede control over the port in exchange for that?
No. But I'm trying to help you.
Me neither. And
We're not going to give it to the feds either.
right. I mean, there have been proposals in the past to essentially convert this to a state facility run by DOT.
I want to run it, I just want to change the name. Get the guilty.
But we don't want to create the impression that somehow it's not run by an entity of the municipality.
But you also want to get votes from all across the state legislature.
And we agree that's going to be a significant
Say
challenge.
Anchorage has enough, we don't need to give them anything.
Yeah.
We can get the Matsu folks because.
No, it's the Port of Fairbanks too.
Interesting concepts. I think we kind of broached on them a little bit when we were talking about phasing plan in terms of, but we'll see.
So we'll keep you apprised of this, Mr. Chairman. This is still a work in progress. Like I say, some of our stakeholders were pretty invested in the existing phasing program, and it will be, they're aware of the ask, and we hope that they're willing to consider this alternative.
What's the fallback position?
Then we go
Borrow
forward
the money elsewhere?
with the existing phasing plan. It's not the existing phasing plan is not bad. It just spends $120 million tearing off the front of the expansion, and we've spent $120 million, and we still have an old port. The concern is that we could spend that $120 million and be a long way towards building the port that's gonna be around for the next 75 years.
You can't put the bit larger cranes and all those other.
Oh, no, none of that.
Return facility.
No,
So
yeah,
that's another-
that's dead in the water.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we can't invest in a new port facility with new piers, new docks, new trestles, we're gonna be coming to you for $5 to $20 million a year just to keep the existing
Just keep
facility in
setting up too,
operation. And that's not gonna be very satisfying for anybody, because that doesn't improve anybody's functionality. It doesn't make it possible for the larger vessels that we believe both Toad and Matson want to bring here over the next 10 to 20 years.
It's absolutely critical that they give us a strong letters of support.
Oh, no, we're not talking about letters. They're going to march
Physical
in and out of
presence.
the offices in Juneau in lockstep with the municipality of Anchorage. And they all agree that's what they want to do. There's no doubt about a willingness to support this project. We're just still working on exactly what the project looks like as we present it to Juneau. So there is no lack of interest from those sort of core supporters as well as from other sort of, I'll call them second-tier supporters, Associated General Contractors, organized labor, and many others that want this project to go forward. And we want everybody, the Marine pilots, the Corps of Engineers, we want everybody walking into the Senate Finance Committee and every office in Juneau they can get into and providing exactly the same message. And that's the key. And that's the alignment that we're trying to gain right now.
Well,
So this will not be about letters. I mean, letters are great, but we need them, we need their advocates in Juneau, we need their general managers, their corporate leadership walking in and saying, Port of Anchorage needs a big number. So,
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Baskin.
Thank you. Hey, Mike, I just wanted to say I'm absolutely intrigued by this idea. You know, I think you're 100% right when you're talking about all that, you know, all the users and all the affected people, you know, going down to Juneau. But the real key for me here is, what is Senate Finance going to do? You know, what is, you know, so it's not just that. I think the outreach is, you know, House Finance too, frankly, but is, are you, I know you said you have some legislators that you're bringing out there. I'm assuming, you know, the finance committees and both sides of the legislature you're focusing on right now. Is that your first focus?
absolutely. All of those members, the Anchorage members of all those committees have been invited, and a few non-Anchorage members as well. I know there's at least one finance committee member that's joining us on Thursday. I don't know if there are other finance committee members that have confirmed. But
Okay.
we agree with you 100%. It's not all legislators are equal in terms of you know, different legislators play different roles on different types of issues, and the finance committee will be key on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would just ask, I'm absolutely intrigued by this idea. So if you could help me, just, you know, maybe I'll stop by and talk to you, or you could send me an email with a few points. I'm certainly willing to help in the effort.
That'd be great. Yeah, legislators from Eagle River Chugiak, frankly, are overrepresented, to our benefit.
Oh, let's not get carried away now.
No, I mean,
No,
you know, you've got, there are
They got
members
people-
from your neighborhood that are on both finance committees. I'm not sure of very many other, there's no other part of Anchorage that can say that.
No, I know you're right. I was teasing, but that's why I say, to me, you know, your initial thought is when you put only one project on the Capitol, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, but you recognize the fiscal situation of nickel and diming and where was the most bang for our buck, essentially, and not just in the port. So I think this is really, I'm actually quite enthralled by this idea. So I would like to get with you, because I think, especially because I recognize who sits on finance, I think I could be I think I could be helpful.
That'd be great.
Let's just say it.
Other questions? Other comments? Other information you want to give us, pass on?
I think we've hit the high.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Travis? Thank you, guys.